Hello everyone, this is the new episode of Patent Effect Podcast. I'm in Berlin today and I have a very distinguished friend, colleague from Berlin who is also founder of IPlytics company, which is a Berlin-based startup. Maybe we can call it as a scale-up company. I am together with Dr. Tim today, the CEO and co-founder of IPlytics. Welcome, Tim. How are you?
Hello, Mustafa, and thanks for inviting me. I'm very well. Berlin is very warm right now, so happy to. Welcome that you're living here now, and happy to talking to you today on your podcast.
Thank you so much. Yeah, as you said, that it is a kind of challenge for myself also to start living in Berlin and also starting a new business in Berlin with the new investment and new the partnership of the German company. So I'm really glad to see you here in our podcast to discuss about standard essential patents. We know that we are following the rise of standard essential patents in different industries, and you are the one of the most experienced expert entrepreneur, the person in Europe and the United States and other countries. And but before discussing our topic today, I and also our audience would like to know you closely. Who is Dr. Tim, and what is your background, and what is the inspiring story of the establishment process of IPlytics company? And maybe we can start from that point.
Sure, happy to give a little introduction of who I am. You call me Dr. Tim, so that doctor comes from an economics PhD I did. This is actually when I moved to Berlin. It was in 2009. And in Berlin, I started to do an empirical PhD on patent statistics and standards. So this is how I got into the topic of why so-called standard essential patents mattered. And I was, I think, one of the first who, used the data of so-called declared essential patents and analyzed those. And back then, as a PhD, that wasn't really sophisticated. We worked with spreadsheets and we crawled websites, and we took different data sources together to analyze so-called essential patents. And my PhD was funded back then, actually, by Microsoft. So it was a very industry-applied PhD. I presented the results on regular basis, not only to Microsoft, but to other industry players. And there was so much interest in that data. So I understood that this interest was growing. So we started to do first consultancy work back then with the professor I worked with, Knut Blind. And from that, we understood if you provide consultancy on data analysis, that's not a very smart business, because the minute you hand in the data, it's outdated, right? I mean, data is a continuously changing thing. So this is when the idea grew for IPlytics, and the company was founded then in 2014. So 2 years after my PhD and some times of consultant work over the years. I started the company with two others. My co-founder Dimitri is CTO, and my co-founder Rozan, COO. And we started here in Berlin, actually with Microsoft Accelerator, which is by coincidence, again, Microsoft, but because we were on Microsoft Azure's cloud. So we started there in a nice office unter den Linden. And now today we are based here in Berlin-Kreuzberg. Actually, you see my office here. Are 35 employees worldwide, and the Berlin office around 20 people. And been growing the company, been growing the business ever since.
Perfect. It's 8 years that you founded a company. It's a long time.
It is a long time. It's a long process. Also, we have now venture capital in the company. So at some point, investors got interested in, and of course, that's when things accelerated. So the past 3-4 years were really, we were really growing fast.
Perfect to hear that. And also among the IP professionals in Europe, in United States, even in Turkey, IPlytics is getting more popular because we are reading your the reports from your website, from IAM magazine or other platforms. That is reports created by using your the standard essential patents and analytics, the results, statistics. So it is getting more exciting and getting more popular. nowadays. And today's topics for both of us is rising of the standard essential patents. So in the world, especially for the particular some important industries, is getting more important. So maybe we can start from the beginning. So we have the technology standards in the one side, and the another side is the patents, and the combination of these, it's creating a new term, standard essential patents. So maybe I can ask that, what is this standard essential patents?
Yeah, and it's a good question because it's kind of controversial even because if you think about what a patent does and what a standard does, is actually the opposite. A patent is excluding someone from your intellectual property, right? And this is the whole foundation that you get the monopoly right of your invention at least for 20 years, right? A standard is the opposite. A standard wants to facilitate the use of technology. So the more people use it, the better. So a patent is excluding the use while the standard is promoting the use. And I think that is when these worlds come together and that's when it becomes interesting. The definition of a central patent is actually in technical terms, or I know your audiences are patent professionals, is when a patent claims an invention that is incorporated in a technology standard, or that people call it that read on a technology standards. And think about a standard like 4G or 5G or Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, RFD, or video audio codec. What we're doing right here, right now, is a video codec, by the way. Anyone who's using that technology is using the patented invention. So in legal terms, actually infringing on the patent. So imagine any smartphone manufacturer in the world, anyone who produces a tablet or a computer or any smart device is obviously, producing products or a TV that are using all these standards, because any TV even today is connected to Wi-Fi at least, or other standards like HDMI is even standard. So all of these products are using patented inventions. And this is when SEPs come in, because anyone who owns these SEPs is now allowed to request a compensation for the patents. When they are committing to FRAND, fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory terms, which most of the SEP owners do, they have to license. So you're losing your right of exclusivity, but you can ask for a price. But this price cannot be any price. It has to be a reasonable price. And this is where things getting interesting now. What is reasonable to ask, and who owns all these patents, and how many patents exist there? And this is when IPlytics comes in and we provide the data on this.
And we were discussing, or we were following the patent war in the recent years. But nowadays, we are talking about patent wars in standard essential patents. So there are lots of infringements cases in all over the world. So in the last reports, they said that the number of SAP holders has more than doubled in the past 10 years. So what has changed, and why is it getting more important year by year, Tim? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it has to do with connectivity. If you think about our world these days, everything is connected. So even at home, you come home, you may even use Alexa or any other speaking device that may be connected to your TV, or you can use your cameras, your home security with your smartphone, or anyone who's using car sharing or who's driving one of these newer cars can open your car with a smartphone. So all of this is supported by a standardized technology. So any car actually that is sold in the past 10 years is integrating either 3G, 4G technologies, because to make these things happening, just updating your navigation system or internet radio in your car, all of these support standards. And I think why this topic became so much more important is because the use cases of connectivity have become more important, right? So the auto industry may be the first one, but you can think about home appliances, anything connected to the internet, even your refrigerator or your kitchen, or any device at home, but also in industrial manufacturing. Any machine, may communicate certain data to a data cloud to analyze the data and make it more productive, or to identify, in certain machine learning analysis when the machine will break, right? And all this analysis and exchange of information is always connectivity technology that is based on standards. So Bluetooth, RFID, Wi-Fi, cellular standards like 3G, 4G, soon 5G, all of these are patented standards, if you may say so. And that is also why it is much more important. If you think about the patent holders, we do see a lot more companies coming in now from the Asian regions, mainly China. So a lot of handset manufacturers that are now entering our markets, the Xiaomi's, the Oppos, the Honor devices, but also chip manufacturers that have been increasingly growing within China, and that are now internationally coming up, and they all need access to SEPs, right? Because they all sell devices that are based on standards. And one strategy to be stronger in negotiations of how much they have to pay is to own SEPs themselves. So they have been starting to file these patents. Some of them have also acquired those patents. It's not only, organically. And that is why the number of holders has been increasing. This is one reason. The second reason is that suddenly industries that before were not owning SEPs, so SEP owners are mainly telecommunication companies or chip manufacturing companies. But now the auto industry has to pay a lot of SEP licenses too. So they are the licensees. But again, also to increase and make their position stronger, they have been filing SEPs on particular use cases that apply to the auto industry. For example, V2X technologies, vehicle to everything connectivity. And for these particular standards that are, automotive specific, these companies also now file SEPs and they show up in our database. And this is why, the number of SEP holders has been increasing. By the way, the number of SEP holders has been increasing by 2.6, while the number of overall SEP families has been increasing by 3.5. So that is even more growing, the total number of SEPs.
Wow. Wow. So the connectivity is increasing. So not all, but most of the majority of the sectors are getting more intelligent, smart. It means that they are using connectivity technologies. Even the industry is not changed today, is not using connectivity technologies, but maybe 5 years later they will need connectivity technologies. It means that these silence industries will need or will be careful about standard essential patents, right? Can we say that?
Yes, the minute you're implementing a standard where that standard is subject to essential patents, you're using the patented technology. In that minute, anyone who owns the patent can go to court, drag you to court, and say, hey, you're infringing my patent. You need to compensate me. And if you're not compensating me, I'll go to court. And that has happened with the auto industry in the last 2-3 years, where we had a lot of litigation, in particular in Germany, on SEPs.
Exactly. So it is also affecting the profitability of the company. So if you are not aware of standard essential patents and then you are trying to produce something, and then suddenly you are realizing that you have to pay something to the SEP holder or patent holder if it is not a standard. So it is getting more important from now on. We can say that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, typically, the targets, or targets maybe the wrong word, but the SEP owners, they go after the big pockets. So a small startup is very unlikely to be approached by anyone. They fly under the radar. The minute they grow big, obviously, and the revenues become interesting, and the business model heavily relies on a standard, in that moment, they are, there's a big chance that they will be recognized and people will come up and say, hey, you're using your standardized technologies, you're using our patented technology, now you have to pay for it.
You mentioned that the telecommunication technologies are mostly dealing with standard essential patents, and yeah, also the connectivity is increasing, and connectivity technologies are in that. So, can I ask who is the most important industry segment, the customer segment, or we can say like automobile, who needs to adapt standard essential patents? Maybe you can explain, or you can make some drawing about this subject. Today automotive is now getting adapted to the standard essential patents, but in the future, or in the near future, medical industry, for example, needs standard essential patents. So can we say this kind of the predictions or something?
Yeah, I mean, in order to understand which is the most affected industry or which industry relies heavily on standards, you kind of have to think about the products and how much value the standardized technology brings to products. And that is by far still today the smartphone handset industry, by far. And this is also, if you think about the total SEP royalties, which is estimated at around 20 billion US dollars per year, I would say more than 90% of that is still in the handset business. And with handset, I'm also including tablets or any device that is like a handset, tablet, sometimes also computers. But smartphones is actually the one that relies mostly on connectivity, which is how much worse is your iPhone when you go out without 4G, right? You're not going to use it unless you have like a public Wi-Fi. But it's useless mainly, right? And that is why these standards are mostly used there. Automotive was the next, but not only recently. You have to think about it. Cars implement these standards since over 10 years. It's even by law in the European Union right now that every car has to have eCall. This is a law 5 years ago even. So any car sold worldwide these days is using the connectivity, and that not since yesterday. So that has been going on for years. And that has been also going on for years in the home appliance industry. I think that is one that is also already heavily used it. So any TV manufacturer, anyone who is producing, some device that produces a video, even the companies that are providing the content, like the Netflix or Amazons or Alibaba, they have to pay too. I know that because they're our clients. So these are the industries that are also affected. And it goes on from there. I think the next one that we will see is the manufacturing industry. So machines are these days communicating with each other, also since several years, but the standards they have been using were quite simple. It was in many cases still today is cables, right? So it's a very simple connection. But cables are not very reliable and they're quite expensive. If you have a lot of them, it's actually more cheaper to use wireless. And with 5G, we have more improved latency, more improved bandwidth, more improved energy consumption. So I think 5G can be a game changer to have a lot more communication technology in the manufacturing space. So that for me is the next one that I'm sure we will see. First of all, use more of the standards, and then secondly, licensing will happening, and then I think also some litigation will happen.
Yeah, exactly. Why I'm saying the medical industry will affected by the standard essential patents, because they are mostly, the switching their technology to the wearable technologies, to tracking, the some essential points of the bodies, and that's also brings us to connectivity.
Right.
So if you are, for example, if a startup company wants to have developed a wearable technology for a medical industry, for fitness, for sport, they need this. They need to be aware about standard essential patents, because they need to license it, because these are the standards, right?
Exact. I mean, it depends sometimes also of the standard you're using. So there are differences. It's a difference if you're using 5G or 4G compared to Wi-Fi, and for example compared to Bluetooth. So many of these more simple, I call them more simple because the connectivity is more simple. So more simple medical devices that track, or your fitness tracking watch, they typically don't have any 4G or 5G in it. They have a Bluetooth bridge to a device that is then connecting to Wi-Fi or something. And that Bluetooth bridge, or the Bluetooth standard in general, is a standard that is also subject to essential patents. But the essential patents come with the license of the chip. So you don't have really a legal problem there. So if Bluetooth is the only standard, you're actually fine. But if you go beyond, if you go to Wi-Fi, if you have any video in there, or if you have now 4G, 5G, then you have to be aware, and then you have to worry.
That's really good importance, because you are coming from the accelerator. So also this kind of, the deep tech accelerators also need to give this important information to their startups. What is the white space? What is the dangerous space to be careful? That's really good to know that. So maybe we are saying that standard essential patents, SIPs, and these are important, but I'm wondering, and also our audience is wondering, to what is how it works. What is the how is the system procedure works? If you have a technology, how can I, as a company, how can I make it standard essential patent? Who are responsible to make this approved as a standard? So there are some standard organization, but can you say something? Can you explain the the working mechanism of these standard setting organizations?
Sure, sure, happy to. I mean, I think it's important to understand that the SEP is not coming first. It's actually a result of standards development. In standards development, you can imagine that there is really a diversity of different standards organizations. For 3G, 4G, 5G, that for example is the 3GPP. And the 3GPP has different topics and groups. One of these groups is, for example, V2X, vehicle communication. Others are only about machine communication. So they have their own topics. So if you want to, first of all, get involved in the development of standards that are specific to your particular use case, let's say you are a car manufacturer, then you would, join one of these standards organizations with other companies in your industry. So on the V2X technology, for example, other car manufacturers are joining, or so automotive suppliers in particular who supply the connectivity technologies. They go to these meetings. So you have to engage in standards development, which is an investment because you really have to, first of all, you have to have the experts that are able to engage. Then you have to send those people to all these meetings. It was all virtual during COVID, but before these meetings are worldwide. So it's a lot of cost involved in that. And then within the standards process, you have the possibility to make proposals, technical suggestions to what a standard should look like. And in our world, we call them standards contributions. And these standard contributions are very technical, right? These are coming from your R&D departments. These are new inventions. And these inventions are, in many cases, patented before presented, obviously. That is important. So your process of the standards development should always include the strategic angle of anything you present at these standards meetings should be patented beforehand. And if you've done that strategically, you can, if your proposal is accepted, this is of course something, it could be that you present something and no one is approving or accepting your idea. But if it is accepted by the standards body, meaning by your peers, by the other standards developing companies, then it's integrated in the final standard. And then eventually your before patented invention, if you have been drafting these claims in a smart way, that they really read on the standard, then you have your standard essential patent. And that is, it's a long way. I mean, it doesn't typically happen by accident. So you have to really do this intentionally and strategically. And you have to be making sure that your invention is really novel. Because one thing that I've seen a lot is that, especially the ones that are deemed essential, have been actually, in many cases, found to be invalid or even actively invalidated because there's a lot of prior art in the standards process. And that's also what we, for example, in Analytics have data on the whole meeting minutes and contribution information. And there's a lot of technical data that you can find. And in many cases, it has been published before your invention was sent to the office. And then, you spend all your efforts and money and your patent is invalidated. So that's something risky also for these companies, making sure their patents are not only essential, but they're also valid. So these are the two things you have to make sure.
It's a quite long story. Yeah? It's a quite long process. For maybe we can divide this process into the two parts for the patent holders and for the patent users after the declaration of this standard essential patent. For the first one, patent holders, as you said, that if I am a producer of TV producer, I need to send my some of the the professionals into these working groups in the standard setting organizations, which they're meeting organized in Canada or United States or many different countries. So you need to spend lots of money for the travel costs. And it is also, please make me correct if I am wrong, it's also a lobby activity, right? You need to be a lobbying in that working groups. So
Yeah, I mean, if lobbying has to do with technical merit, I mean, I think at least I like to believe, but this is also confirmed with many interviews that really the technical proposals with the best technology are selected and not the ones that have the strongest lobby behind it. At least this is what people still believe in, that standards development is really consensus on the best technical solution.
exactly. And the other on the other side, for the users. So the standard organizations are publishing these standard essential patents in their database, and you have to follow so many standard organizations from their website, which is very difficult. And now at that point, IPlytics came out. So what is the how IPlytics make our life easier to search standard essential patent, to analyze, to create some strategic points from this landscape. So what is your value proposition on that?
Thank you. This is actually the perfect problem that you described, because that whole complexity of understanding the standards data, the documents, the specifications, and the patents that exist and the declarations made at these patent offices is the pain point that many companies had. And at IPlytics, what we do is we have mainly three databases. So we have worldwide patent information from any patent office to know who is the owner of the patent, is the patent still valid, active, not expired, these kind of things. And then we connect the worldwide patent information with so-called patent declarations. So any company that is submitting and is part of the standards development has to make public the patents that are potentially essential for that standard. So what you find on these websites is a lot of patent numbers that relate to so-called specification numbers. So you have a lot of numbers, but if you don't know these by heart, which no one does, you need more info. So we take the patent number, we connect it to the worldwide patent information, and then we connect the standards information to our third database, which hosts all the standard documents and the contribution information. And with these three databases, you have the full picture. You know who owns SEPs, let's say for 5G, how many of these are still active, in which jurisdictions, have they sold some of these patents, have they acquired some of these patents, how big is the portfolio, right? And that is important information that you need if you want to, on the one side, our client base are the SEP owners. If you want to build and develop your portfolio, so many of the IP portfolio managers are our clients. But also the licensing executives that need to know which part of their portfolio they want to license out and how it relates to other portfolios. But then we also, of course, have the other side of the table, who are clients who are licensing in, who are getting approached, and they don't typically know a lot less than the others. So here we do need to explain them how the data works, and they can then be informed about what's going on.
So it means that if I am using the IPlytics, so I can search the patent landscape in terms of the standard essential patents. So I can divide all the technology fields. Also, I can also search standard setting organization type, and so on. So it brings us to another chapter. So IPlytics in another chapter in terms of the other patent data analytics databases, I think. So at that point, maybe we can also talk about and discuss about the countries, the United States, Europe, or specifically Germany. Do you think that there is a specific powerful country in terms of the enforcement of the standard essential patents, or the popularity of the number of the essential patent holders? Do you think that's the Europe or United States or Asia? Which are the most important countries or regions or continents?
Yeah, typically the most important regions, I would call it, are those that sell most products that are compliant with the standard, right? While in the past, this has definitely been the United States and Europe mainly, China has been really catching up. So the Chinese market itself is one of the largest in the world. And also the IP system in China got better. So you can, enforce your patents in China these days. It's still a little bit unpredictable, about the outcomes. But China is not only selling most products that are standard compliant, they're also producing them. So if you look at your iPhone, most of the parts have been produced in China. So, where the technology is produced and where the technology is sold are typically the most important markets. So China, I would say, has really caught up. So we have US, Europe, and China as the major markets. Litigation is another thing. I mean, we have to understand that markets are anyways global. You're not going to sell your 5G device only in one country, at least not long term. You're going to sell it worldwide. Also in Africa, South America, obviously Korea and Japan. And the whole licensing typically is also a global discussion. However, we have local courts, right? So what we see in the market is what we call forum shopping. So if I'm the owner of a standard central patent, I'm selling my, I know that the person using the standard is selling the products worldwide, producing often worldwide. So I can really choose the country. And they often go to Germany. And why Germany? Because Germany is, people say at least, somehow patent friendly in a way that they still or more easily grant injunctions. An injunction is, your listeners know that, is really the strongest part in this, because if you cannot sell your products anymore in a certain country, you're really stuck. This harms your revenues. And we had that recent case here in Germany of Ford. Ford is an American company. Of course, they're producing and selling in Germany, but because of a standard central patent, there was at least a risk of an injunction by a Munich court. And that, increased, of course, the pressure on Ford to finally pay a license for SEPs, which they did under that pressure.
I think that you also mentioned some of the companies, some of the big, the corporates are holding this industry. Qualcomm, Intel, and Huawei. These are the very big companies who are also holding majority of the standard essential patents. Ericsson, Philips, Nokia, and but in the near future, what do you think about the break-even points, or what is the important point or time when the other SMEs and startups who are dealing with high technology getting aware of importance SAP standard essential patents? What do you think about it? Or what should we do in this ecosystem to get to disseminate this information to the whole IP ecosystem, or not in the IP, all the other SMEs and startups who are not aware of the IP ecosystem?
I mean, I think it really all depends on how important connectivity becomes in the future. And here it really depends on the specific use cases. Anything that is moving, that needs connectivity to exchange information, that is not at home or not, moving from A to B, I would say is probably the most reliant on SEP technology or patented standards technology. So I would suggest any SME and startup who is producing that kind of devices to get informed early on, not only about SEPs. That is the consequence at a certain point when you have to pay for the technology, but even being part of standards development. Because if you're part of the standards group, you can influence, first of all, where the standard goes. Second of all, you know very early on how to implement it. Right? Implementing 5G is not, that easy. You have to be compliant to certain specifications. And it's nothing, it's not like we've defined 5G and that's the final 5G standard. They have meetings every month, and there's new versions and new releases every month. So the 5G standard today is a different standard of tomorrow and in the future. And then there's 6G coming up. So I think being informed about it, any industry that is heavily, affected by connectivity, or where connectivity is a part of the technology, without their certain product or system is not working well, they have to be made aware, and they have to act in a way that I would be informed about where is the standard is at, what are the patents that I may care about at a certain point of time. And then we also have more and more patent pool programs that they also should be aware of. So Avanci, for example, started a patent pool only for the automotive industry of SEPs. And I'm sure there will be more pools in that direction. So that is also something they should be aware, because it's much easier to license to a pool than to all these different patent holders. That makes the life of the implementer actually more easy.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. And I know you said that licensing. So, in the last point, maybe we can also talk about the licensing conditions, because it brings us the front terms. And if you are holding a standard essential patents, you have to obey the front terms. And if you are a user, you have to license and you have to pay royalty. But also we have to discuss about the valuation of these standard essential patents. So what do you think about these licensing conditions and the valuation? Because we saw that there are lots of the court decisions and patent wars in the court to determine the real front royalty terms.
Yeah, I think friend and what friend is the main
Yeah.
discussion, and what it actually means, without even going into details what fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory means. It's all about the price in the end, right? How much do I have to pay? This is really what matters. So Avanci is offering their SEPs for $15 per car. You can now argue that's too much, or that's actually pretty cheap. And I don't have the answer. I wouldn't say it's cheap or expensive, but you should compare that to other prices of SEPs, for example, for handsets, I guess. But in the end, Friend is a price. And is that reasonable, which is the R in Friend? Is it a reasonable price or not? And in order to determine that, they're typically in court or even in bilateral licensing negotiations, there's two methods. The first one is the comparable license method. So, I have an agreement with another company that is in your industry and they have agreed to a certain price. So that is a comparable price that I'm offering you too. So it's non-discriminatory. That's the discriminatory part. But that's, of course, a chicken and egg problem, because who's going to be the first who agrees to a reasonable price? And was that really reasonable when they agreed? So that is always the chicken and egg issue they have. And we need a lot of data to make that really a statistically proven acceptable price in the industry. What is also done is the so-called top-down approach. Top-down approach means we are assuming a certain licensing rate for the standard, and then we look at who is owning the patents and what is the share of these patent owners. And that is exactly what you just talked about when we have to discuss about patent value, because just counting patent families on a portfolio level will not do it. Counting patents in general, we know even without SEPs, is difficult because every patent is unique by definition. And some patents are really valuable, gold nuggets, and others are just incremental and maybe not of any value. And with SEPs, we have another dimension, because we talked about this patent declaration data that we integrated IPlytics, but these are not verified essential patents, meaning there was no third party or anyone who claim charted these patents and verified that really these claims described an invention used in the standard implementation. That data is not available. So what we have is a database that has potentially essential patents, but we have to understand if these are really essential or not. And there, of course, in analytics, we have some solutions to do that. I don't go into much detail here, but we have a semantic algorithm that compares the claims to the sections of the standards. We cross-correlate inventor information, because often the inventor on a patent is going to the needings as well. So we have some ways to identify value, which is not the perfect world. I mean, we're not claim charting really, but we're helping to get an understanding which portfolios are more likely essential compared to those that are less likely essential. And then we look at the overall number of patents, and then you can find better shares of portfolios in the market. But that is an exercise that is done a lot in litigation at the last resort, but also in bilateral licensing negotiations to understand what's going on.
Yeah, normally it's evaluation of the normal patents are difficult, but when it comes to standard essential patent valuation, it's getting more difficult. So it's good to hear that you have some solution to make their life easier for the IP professionals. Maybe before closing our session, Tim, uh, of course, like in every topic, there are some challenges in all of the systems. So in this standard essential patent system or ecosystem, there are also challenges. Uh, we are hearing that standard setting organization declares a patent as an essential, but at the end, by court decision or something, it is not essential. So how can we struggle with this challenge? Is there any way to predict essentiality or the essential score of any patent? Do you think that it's a challenge, or IPlytics? Where is IPlytics in that challenge? Maybe we can complete by answering this question.
Yes, the complicated situation for IPlytics is that we're always in between very strong camps, right? There is a big lobby for the SEP holding companies, and there's a big lobby for the licensees, those that have to implement the standards. And they're fighting each other. They're fighting each other even with reports, with any information that they make publicly available. They fight each other in court, and they always keep arguing for a certain method that is good and more closer to the truth compared to the other method that is not close to the truth. And it's always in between, those camps that we have to stay neutral because they're both our clients. That we have to think about solutions that are fair, that are not biased towards one or the other party. And predicting essentiality, of course, can be easily biased. And I'm a PhD in statistics. I know how easily an algorithm can be biased towards one or the other side just by changing, small things in the algorithm. So at IPlytics, we always try to be a database that is really a database. We don't have an opinion, and we allow others to kind of refine the data and create their opinion on it. But what we do is we create transparency, and we create the information that is accessible to anyone, really. Our subscriptions are not expensive. So compared to any legal fees, any company, even an SME, can easily access the data and get an understanding what is going on. And on top of that, they can make up their minds of what is going on in the market and what is not. And I think there's also, some regulation going on right now. We had public consultations from the US, from Europe. England has their own one, Canada. So, for example, the European Commission is also asking for more transparency. But even there, we have to be careful what kind of transparency we ask for, because some transparency may also not be good for the system. If any licensing contract would be public, both sides would not be happy with it because there's a lot of critical information in there. For example, how many products are sold in a certain market that are compliant to a certain standard for the implementer is something that they don't want to have be public, right? And so there's we always have to be careful in what we wish for. But I think I think we should more educate. And this is also something that we do a lot at IPlytics. Not only we sell our product and our software, but we do a lot of, I call that thought leadership. So we educate the people. We do webinars. We have a podcast too, by the way, the SEP Couch. And all this is only done to educate the industry of what is going on.
Yes, I totally 100% agree with you. So also before closing, as you said that we have to mention about your reports, the opinions and contribution to the European Commission studies, and your webinars, online webinars are all accessible. And also you have a really great podcast, SIP Couch. You are leading the podcast. Also, I will give all the related links in the description of this episode, so all our audience can easily reach if they don't know so far. So, Tim, that's a really good conversation regarding the rise of standard essential patents. I really enjoy and excited to learn something also new. Thank you so much for your contribution for this episode and also your contribution to the ecosystem.
Thank you, Mustafa, for inviting me. And also thanks for doing this great podcast, The Patent Effect. I'm a big fan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tim. I hope we will meet in person very soon in Berlin. Maybe lunch or drink something together in the sunshine. Today is not very good weather here, but maybe in the upcoming days.
I'll be happy to do that. Let's meet in person, and welcome to Berlin.
Thank you so much, Tim. And if you have something to say before closing,
I mean,
just the right time.
My final remarks would be: it's a complicated world. There's a lot of complexity. You will not understand that in a minute or 10. So if you're interested in, check out iplytics.com. We have information all freely available. And if you should be interested in the data, you can always shoot us an email and we'd be happy to help. But this was great. I think we explained everything here, and thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Tim. It's my pleasure to host you in our podcast session. So let me close the session now.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. See you then. Yes, thank you so much for listening our this podcast that we recorded with Dr. Tim, who is the founder of IPlytics. And also you can find related information about the company, the webinars, podcasts, and also some of the important information about the standard essential patents. So we will drop this information in the description of the episode. So this is the ending of our episode, and you can find our other podcast episodes in Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and also Google Podcasts. Also, you can find our information and post in our social media accounts. So, see you each other again in a following episodes in the near future, and have a good day. Bye bye.